We just saw James Gray's The Immigrant, and the way this show works is we do this in two parts. The first part is spoiler-free. We tell you whether we like the movie or not and whether we recommend it. And then in the second part, we get into more detail and potentially talk about spoilers. So you can kind of gauge whether this is something you want to go and check out or not, and get our opinion without spoilers. And if you've already seen the movie or don't care to and just want to hear what we thought, you can get the full story. So this is a movie I hadn't heard a whole lot about, and it looked interesting, it looked intriguing. The cast is very good, and it was surprisingly very, very good. It's the story of a woman who comes over from Poland during World War I with her sister, and there's a series of events that basically separates them. The sister ends up stuck on Ellis Island with tuberculosis, and she is basically put through this ringer of she eventually, it turns more towards like prostitution and things like that, but it's a really compelling character piece of you're never quite sure who to trust, who you can trust, who you're constantly asking the question of who's right and who's wrong in these situations and what's happening. This is a movie that I can just about recommend to anybody. It's really well acted. The period work is really amazing. It looks like it was made in the 1920s. It looks like it was made during World War I. New York looks great, but it also has this very realistic feel where, it's not played up. I guess it's Prohibition times, so it's like the early 20s, but it's not played up. With a lot of high gloss sort of Hollywood thing. It's this really strange, like, low budget period suspense drama. And through it all, the central performance is so strong that you believe and you understand, like, every decision that she makes. Like, even just from her expression, you can tell what she's thinking. You can tell what is happening.
Yeah, I think the one thing that kind of makes me sad about this movie is that it may not hold up very well to the typical summer blockbuster.
Oh, no, of course not.
Because you really, in the same vein, you really have to invest in the story. And, like, when you left to go and get a refill, I was like, oh, I don't think I could leave because I don't want to miss some nuance of the story and how all of these pieces fit together and how it all plays out, because you can't predict who is going to do what. They're really making decisions in the reality of what is going on at each moment, and so you can't I really wanted to stereotype the characters, and you couldn't do that because they surprised you.
So, yeah, and we'll get into more detail on all that in the other part. But, yeah, I mean, it's a movie that if you see the trailer and you think, that looks interesting, I would go and check it out if you can find it. Like I said, I hadn't heard much about it. It didn't end up on my radar for even doing a review this week. And this ended up being our 50th review, and I'm lucky. I'm glad we chose this one. It was a good one to do. So that's sort of the spoiler-free version. Definitely go check out this movie if you can find it, or when it comes out on video. I don't know how available it's really going to be. And it's called The Immigrant, so it's kind of a weird, hard title to remember or to think about, but definitely check it out. So, like, right off the bat, it seemed like Joaquin Phoenix's character was a con man, and the revelation at the end that he had orchestrated all of those events was not a surprise to me at all.
No. That was the part I expected.
And I saw through Jeremy Renner the whole time. I knew that he was full of it through the whole thing. What was unexpected was her sort of having this inner strength that even though she's debasing herself and doing things that she doesn't want to do, she can still find, like, she can still forgive these people that have done these things to her.
I think Joaquin Phoenix also sort of redeemed himself at the end. And that's sort of what I was talking about with the unexpected, that people really reacted to the situation as, like, I don't think he ever expected to fall in love with her.
No, I mean, not in a real sense.
Right, I really think he did. I mean, the sacrifices he made at the end and the arrangements he made at the end were really sort of for her greater good and not his own.
Well, and also, I mean, him killing Jeremy Renner's character, I think really, like, shook him and made him realize, like, I am not a good person, and I am taking everyone down with me, and I deserve to be in this situation, and this woman does not deserve to be in this situation.
Right, and he wanted better for her, which I think, I mean...
Yeah.
Like you said, that it wasn't that he was in love with her. He truly loved her and wanted her to have the best possible life going forward, and realized that wasn't probably with him.
Yeah.
So, I think he redeemed himself at the end.
Yeah.
Out of choice or perhaps necessity.
The other thing that was interesting is the prostitution aspect of the movie is all, like, implied.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I think that was a good choice, because I think if they had made it too graphic and too painful for the audience, that it would have been harder to...
Plus, it fit with the tone. It really fit with the tone of the movie. That nudity was really not a part of day-to-day life, and that it was only in sort of that setting that you saw it. And
yeah, but I mean, like, there wasn't, like, a quasi-rape type of tone going on at any point. Yeah. So I wouldn't say, like, if that sort of stuff bothers people, I wouldn't. It's something I should have brought up at the beginning. Like, it's not. I mean, there's nudity, but it's like vaudeville nudity. It's like whatever that's called, burlesque style stuff, and there's not sort of, like, women in peril type stuff situations.
No, and actually
all of that's implied. All of that stuff happens off screen, and the scene will change whenever something like that's going on, and the scene changes a lot, and it's really, the way that that's done really keeps the pacing super fast. Like, they don't linger in a scene longer than they need to. They tell you what they need to tell you in the story, and it moves on.
Which I think is part of how thoughtfully it has been made, is that it's not about, like, that scene with, is it Leo? The first guy that she ends up having to sleep with? Leo? Sure. Anyway, whoever it is. Like, they sort of... Kid. Right. They set up the emotional impact of it, but then the actual act itself isn't important. It's about Ava's reaction to it, and Ava's dealing with it, and that it's sort of a milestone in her realizing what she's going to have to do to save her sister. But the sex part isn't important.
But it's such, like, for what it is, it's such a brief scene. And they do this pretty consistently through the movie, where instead of having she says no to the first guy, and then they talk about it, and then she says maybe to the next guy and can't go through with it, and then they talk about it. Instead, all of this happens in one scene where this kid comes in and he's like, my dad wants me to do this, I don't know what I'm doing, and he kind of reaches out for her, and she won't let him, and Joaquin Phoenix says, just hang on, and takes the kid out and comes back to her and says, I don't want you to have to do this either, but it's a lot of money for your sister. You have to tell me now if you don't want to do this. You have to tell me right now if you don't want to do this. And she doesn't say anything, and he lets the kid back in, and that's the end of the scene. So it's a really quick way of getting through a lot of ideas that other screenplays would take 15 minutes to get through that. It would be this long decline, of desperation before that happened. But with her, you get more of this feeling of, she can make her own decisions, and she believes enough in herself and her own convictions that, like, she's not okay with what she's doing, but she's smart enough to know that this is probably the only option.
Best way of making
especially after she tries to get to her family, and
that was the part I was gonna
almost get sent back again.
Bring up next. So the premise is that she and her sister show up on Ellis Island, and her aunt and uncle are supposed to meet them, and they never show up, and so they have to fend for themselves, and her sister gets shipped to the hospital. And it turns out later that there was more parts in there, but she tries to run away from what she thinks is this situation to find her aunt and uncle, and she finds them, and it turns out that her uncle really kind of sold her down the river. I mean, that he didn't want to have anything to do with her.
So the uncle did sell her down the river, and at first they act like everything's fine, and they put her to sleep in their house, and then she wakes up the next morning and the police are dragging her away. And at the end of the movie, it's revealed that that there's a scene towards the beginning where they accuse her of being a woman of low moral character, and that has to do with some stuff that happened on the ship on the way over, and that information getting to the uncle was also part of Joaquin Phoenix's shenanigans.
Got it. All right.
So he actually wrecked the relationship. Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, he is the catalyst. He is responsible for all of the bad things that happened to her in this, but he's also responsible for kind of, I don't know, like sort of helping her grow up a little bit, helping her like get a little bit more streetwise and understand things. And as it turns out, I mean, he sacrifices a lot towards it. And as an audience, you might walk away thinking he's not a redeemable character, but the movie tells you he is. In no uncertain terms, it tells you he is. She tells him that he's not nothing. And it's sort of an echo of an earlier scene where she's, she refuses to be treated as nothing, as just goods being shipped back and forth from one place to the other. So anyway, it's a very good movie. Don't know what else to say. It's definitely worth checking out if you can find it and check it out. So hope you enjoyed our review. Check out the rest of them on YouTube and over at dalemaxfield.com. Thanks for watching.